If I just make a great car, people are going to talk to each other about it and they're going to buy. And I don't need to go do a lot of ads and a lot of, brand marketing advertising because the product will sell itself, so to speak. Hello, and welcome to the Misadventures in Marketing podcast, brought to you by the American Marketing Association San Francisco chapter. I'm Steve Haney, a fractional CMO in Silicon Valley.
And I'm Peter Farago, a high-tech marketer also in Silicon Valley, with a little bit of startup and a little bit of big company experience. Steve and I come together each week to discuss all things in and around high-tech marketing.
We share our own experiences running marketing teams with a special focus on technology startups. What worked, our successes, our failures. We'll also be inviting our CMO friends and other marketing colleagues onto the show every once in a while, and hopefully impart some wisdom along the way.
This week, the theme is around product-led growth. I'm going to call it serving yourself with self-serve products.
Okay.
Self-serve just means that the user can onboard him, her, or theirself without any interaction with other people. So there you have it. And, the two big, just for a little bit of context, the two big go-to-market motions tend to be sales-led or product-led. And we can talk about a little bit of what that means.
Yeah.
I thought today we should just start. I'm going to try to stick to a little bit of a theme or a script, if you will, because I think it helps possibly the audience follow us. So I think the first topic really should be making sure we're all on the same page about what is product-led growth and why has it become probably a bigger area of marketing that people should be familiar with.
Well, is it okay if we set the context a little bit more? Just, usually it's a kind of thing where it's a web app or a mobile app, and you do the self-serve thing, you sign up, you create a login, and usually there's a free bit that they give you to use. And some of the folks, it's a little, some of them it's a lot. And then the idea is eventually you will put in a credit card for more features and you'll get charged on a subscription basis. So would you say that's generally the framework of PLG, but just high level?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think
it varies, but that's the general idea versus the old days when you had a big enterprise sale. Okay, let's get back on your agenda.
This is actually answering the question we are talking about. What is PLG, and the context matters. It fits. Product-led growth is one of the go-to-market motions, and there are really two main ones, and sometimes a mix between the two or hybrid. The first one people know usually is a sales-led. It's sometimes called top-down, and it means that you have a sales team that has to call on and close customers, work them through the process of deciding to buy it, sign a contract. And that usually comes with bigger price tags, and the customers you're selling to have legal requirements, security requirements, and they're just not going to buy something that's either important or expensive enough without talking to people. Product-led growth is this other method where the user acquisition and the expansion into other tiers of using the product can all happen inside of the product experience without having to talk to, say, a sales team. And so that's kind of the difference. And the reason people have been talking about it, people like it because it seems inexpensive, but it actually, to me, is more about the type of product you have, the type of pricing you have, and then you are therefore a company that needs to do product-led growth. You don't choose to do product-led growth.
Inexpensive, you mean the cost of sales is low. The cost of sales is inexpensive. When you say it's inexpensive.
I'd say the price point is lower, and what that really means is the amount of money you can spend acquiring users has to be lower. You have to be more high volume and efficient, because you can't do you're not going to do an expensive $10,000 dinner with top executives from some of the biggest tech companies, trying to woo them into half a million sales contracts, right? Like you don't have those. So to me, it's more about the right tool for the job. And if the job is, hey, I've got I don't know, let's take Spotify is a great example. Spotify, you can start using for free. And then you'll notice as a user, you're looking at it and, oh, there's this pro version. And oh, there's a family version if I have 5 users. And so then you have different tiers of this many dollars per month, that many dollars per month. And usually that becomes product led growth, where you are trying to drive users to sign up in a low friction way, and then you're trying to upsell them all within the product. PLG is its own category. A subset of it is freemium. All that means is in that pricing sheet that you're talking about, there's also a free version. And usually with PLG, with a high volume self-serve product like that, you end up wanting to have it. The product people, the business people, the marketing people all want a free trial experience because that opens up the top of the funnel and it's easier to get people to try it, and then you just try to
Right.
convert them from there. So
Right.
freemium is a subset of freemium is just a pricing model and strategy of upselling someone from a free tier up through other
Would you
levels.
say it's essentially just lead gen? I mean, it's a
In a
cost
sense,
center because they're going to be using CPU and storage that they're not paying for. But,
yeah,
and so, I wonder what that, average top of funnel lead cost is in that respect, right? And what those
yeah.
calculations are.
That is correct. And then the other thing, just to put a finer point on all this, there are free products that are not uh, freemium or product led growth. For example, I worked at Yahoo, which has 1 billion consumers visiting its properties per month, and we primarily showed them ads. We were ad supported ad revenue. Ad revenue is not, at least in my book, PLG. It is
Right.
it's
Well,
a
I would
free
say that is a
service.
paid service because they're paying with their attention, right? I mean, it
Yes,
is paid,
yeah,
any
I would.
advertising, you know, uh, supported product, the user is paying. It's just that they're not paying with dollars; they're paying with attention.
Right. I think that ad supported in my head is a little different. It's usually a more consumer one. But when
Yeah.
we get back to sales led versus product led, sales led companies typically lock customers in with a big annual contract. PLG is giving users greater flexibility in how and when they might pay for various levels of the solution. If you're doing PLG, there are different strategies and tactics you need to evolve, different strategies and tactics you need to employ. And so I thought it would be useful to kind of talk about, well, what are some of the basic building blocks you need to put in place to be able to effectively run a PLG business?
Well, what about deciding whether it's good for your business in the first place? I mean, how do you decide our software product is is uh is a good candidate for a PLG
Hmm.
motion? But I think any modern uh, current approach to doing this, you would definitely, if you can justify it, you would want a PLG motion. So, uh, you know, taking out of the equation personalities and all and just old approaches and maybe not understanding how you go forward. What are the things you consider? Again, you've just been through this with your company. Do you say, oh, okay, this does make sense. We do want to do a PLG motion. How do you make, what are the factors you look at and how do you make that decision?
This is a fascinating discussion, and we did touch on it. And I sort of frame it in my mind as when it comes to, say, PLG versus sales led motions, do you have a say as a company? Do you get to choose it, or does it choose you? This is how you're going to market. This is how you're charging for it. This is why you're giving it away for free. This is why you have to accelerate time to value. You have to let people get their hands on it. You need to get them to AHA as fast as possible.
Right. So some of the factors were the customer type, what the product does, PLG scales. We had a very strong PLG motion when I was VP of marketing at a developer tools company. And basically, I had a model that I had worked out. I usually do everything through a spreadsheet. It's obviously you can't have a spreadsheet think for you, but it was a way for me to always think through the problem myself and frame a set of actions. And, if we saw our product being used, because we tracked IP addresses, and there was a cluster in, say, 10 seats of the product were being bought, each on different credit cards, in a division of, I don't know, a division of the Gap outside of Portland, Oregon, then we would put together, a package for the sales rep and say, okay, we think there's activity there. Go in and we think you can sell 20, 30 seats, or do some bigger deal with the, director of engineering there, and, would put together a, kind of an attack plan. And, usually for us, it was 10, 15, 20 seats being used within a place. We knew that that was kind of the tipping point. But there's a way you view all the data you're collecting to interpret intent before you kick in the way, way more expensive direct sales led motion and have them come in, because they're way more expensive than a PLG motion.
Once you're in PLG, uh, it is something that you have to have good measurement around, and you sort of have to understand how to really construct a funnel and run experiments both in the acquisition funnel and, I'd say, the activation funnel, pre and post acquisition, along the journey, if you will. You basically need to very efficiently convert people at lots of different stages. And the only way to know if that's happening is to measure things well. So you have to really map out all the steps, at least interaction steps with your website and your product. Talk a little bit about pricing. I don't think we need to dwell too much on it, but we talked about freemium. Do you have a free trial? Is that PLG? Is freemium part of PLG? When are you not going to be PLG? Because it's too uh, it's too unrealistic because the customer needs a lot of sales interaction, or the price point's high enough for you to support a sales team, or vice versa. So pricing, do you have thoughts on pricing? You've done PLG. When do you think, is there a rule of thumb? Is there a break point? When do you think about that?
Well, the way, and this is just me, in my experience, I don't have a broad enough experience in this to be super authoritative, but ours was a trial. So you would go in and you would get, I think it was a month or two to use the tool, and then you had to pay up or just stop using it, right? And then we
So
also had
your free experience was
it
full
was a
featured.
trial, not a free tier.
I see. So it
So
was
you
it was
got the
full
whole
access.
meal deal for
Because
1 month.
it was full access but time limited, and
Yeah.
so yeah, and then would you guys, I mean, this is a pretty common tactic, would you then say, hey, if you don't cancel by such and such a day, we're going to start charging you monthly?
No, no, they had to actively put in. It would just stop working, right?
Okay.
And they would have to, if they wanted to continue going, they would have to put in their credit card at that point, and you know, get on some kind of monthly subscription plan we had. And you brought up a great point about more consumer-ish offerings. They got to pay for that somehow, so some folks do it with advertising, right? So they stick advertising in the product to cover the cost of the free users. And then, as I was mentioning earlier, like this QA company I was running for a while, you have to, you know, uh, you just have it free to use forever, right? You just have to
but with but
understand that
with
you need to
limited
keep your server costs and bandwidth costs to a
I
point
see.
where,
Oh, you
it
guys would
becomes worth it.
offer, but that free tier you offered, was that like feature limited,
Well, yeah, yeah,
or consumption
yes,
or
it
consumption
was
limited?
feature.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was feature limited. Certainly, on the small business or even bigger on the enterprise side, there's all kinds of other, um, dynamics I'm sure you have to take into account in regard to what the factors are in terms of how much do you charge, when do you charge for it, what does it look like? Is it a free trial or is it free forever with ads supporting it, or is it free forever for nothing? You just you just absorb those costs and you pay for it another way because you figure the free thing's a great lead generation thing. I mean, you compare that to what it costs you to go run an online ad campaign to get people to click through to fill out a web form, maybe giving away some bandwidth and some server space to a bunch of free users is still way cheaper. I mean, I'm sure there are just, multiple factors that go into that.
So Google's primary revenue source is, of course, showing ads through the search engine, and to power that, they need a lot of data. And so you can, I'm not sure if from the Google Suite, from Docs, Sheets, Slides, and so on, they are gathering some kind of usage data about you as a user. I think so, because you have universal sign-on with Google, and so the more they understand me as a user, the more they can target certain ads. I could imagine if I'm a person who sells CRMs, I'm an advertiser who sells CRMs or productivity software, Google could say, oh yeah, I have these users who are heavy users of these types of products. So there is something in segmentation. So my point is they can monetize the, they can offer that for free. And while they're not charging you for it or explicitly scraping ad data per se, or data for the use of advertising, they are collecting some data that they do monetize in other parts of their core business. And so there is an ecosystem play there. I was at Yahoo, and Yahoo has a series of consumer properties, but also has one of the largest email platforms and consumer email platforms in the world. So Yahoo search, or Yahoo, we also have search. They also had search. Yahoo Mail is massive, like humongous user base. And the most valuable part of that was data. We would find ways to understand things about those users that was helping us with advertising. And it is a very high value stream. So I know that Gmail is is humongously valuable to Google for advertising, no doubt about it. Just like Microsoft's email products, consumer email products help them. They have a very large advertising business, like 30 billion. People don't always think of that with Microsoft. So the three big consumer email players are using a lot of data from the email services. I don't think it's weird. I think it's just helping show you better ads. With respect to free and a product-led growth motion, two thoughts that I think would be relevant for the audience. One was kind of what you were talking about. There's an example that you pointed out where you worked somewhere, and one was, hey, I give users free, full access to my product for a month. It's time-based. And then what I was going to say is important about that. Once you're in it, there is a specific skill set and a set of activities and behaviors as a marketer and a growth person and/or growth person you have to be very good at. And there's a lifestyle that you're living on the job around what you just described. Hey, we live and die by that conversion, that 3 month to paid subscription conversion. And that becomes a really important thing to improve the conversion of, to measure carefully, to generate all kinds of campaign ideas, to make your nurture tracks more effective. And I'm sure you guys spent a lot of energy on that. It's a great model because you have a wide open funnel at letting people try it pretty friction free, and then you're moving them to the paid tier as fast as you can. And you have 1 month to do it. And that is PLG. For people who do it, they're like, of course. People who don't do it, it's a really different life than planning campaigns and thinking about messaging and thinking about target accounts and supporting sales in all these ways and making decks. Like there's there's broad different pockets of marketing out there. So the other one was this is an interesting one related to the company I'm at. When we thought about price points, and we have two reasons to offer a pretty inexpensive tier. I already covered why, in our case, free was useful because it demonstrates the value of the product pretty fast. The The reason we have a pretty low entry level package is we have a lot of startups as customers, and we know that they don't have a ton of
Right.
money. And when we look at the cost of serving them, we limit the consumption. The free trial, for example, limits how much you can use it because we've sort of decided, finger in the air, how much interaction do they really need with the product to understand the value and decide if they're going to actually pay for it. So we don't have a forever free trial, and that's why. Uh, Likewise, we have our entry level is very low because we have a certain type of customer, and we also limit again not only the consumption but the feature set access there. Are we right? We don't know. It's a hypothesis. It's pretty well thought through. It's based on a lot of experience. So I think it is a very good pricing strategy out of the gate, given what we're doing type of customer. And what I was going to also say, this is, I think, an interesting part that some people don't think about. Uh, when you're inside of a bigger company and you usually have a corporate credit card and you have a limit and you have to have authorizations from your boss or other people, sometimes multiple levels up, depending on how big the thing is that you're purchasing. So one of the other considerations we have for our entry level tier is making it inexpensive enough. It's about removing the friction so that people can get into it. And
Yeah.
so there was some thinking, and this is all the stuff from whether you were doing 1 month, 30-day sprint to show value, or I'm saying, hey, I need to give a free but limited access, or I need to give a low price version, or I need to make it cheap enough to think about how enterprise employees can buy things without authorization. All these factors come into it. So understanding that customer journey becomes really important with PLG because you are pushing them through conversion steps.
Right.
So anyway, that it makes it fascinating. I love all the aspects of it.
Yeah.
So
Okay, so let's say you decided that your product is good for some kind of PLG motion in all these different permutations we've talked about, one or the other, and you've got your pricing nailed down and it makes sense. How do you market it? Like, what are the marketing strategies that you go for? And but what I'm liking about this discussion is we're looking at like the different products, the different permutations, the
yeah,
different ways to do different audiences with different products and
yeah,
different same thing with marketing strategies. I think it would be great if we could explore, here's what you do. And can I kick one off for this that I found
yeah,
fascinating?
sure.
And that was Canva. And
Okay,
so
yep,
I was reading about this. There was a guy early on, and what he figured out is that, and this just goes to show how it does have to be organic and it has to be a whole between product and go to market and outbound marketing. You can't think of these things in silos. He went to the product development team and says, I want to do a series of online ads marketing
mm,
Canva to the consumer packaged goods industry. And when they
yep,
click on that ad and they come in to our self-serve product, all the templates, all the messaging on that instance that they click through to is CPG oriented. And
yes,
then I want to do a campaign towards this vertical, which is, I don't know, the aeronautical engineering industry. And so I'm going to put together a set of messaging, a set of ads, put a budget against it. We're going to run it from here to here to here, because that's when, they're looking at, budgets and yada, yada. But I need it to click through a PLG instance of Canva that speaks to Marcom managers in aeronautical engineering or whatever it is.
yeah,
That was a real eye opener for me because because again, when I did this, they all went to the same place. we didn't have the luxury of, because again, Canva's web based. I mean, yeah, they do have a local clients for Windows and Mac, but you go to the web, you use the web app, and this was a real eye opener for me. And this is why it's great to be young like he was. I think he was in his 20s at the time when he was thinking this up, and he doesn't know that you can't do things right. He doesn't
hmm
know that you don't create an instance of your product for every possible advertising campaign. And the product guys were like, yeah, easy enough, we'll make this happen, we'll get it going. And of course it's all agile development, so they can whip these things out. And that was just a huge turning point in the way that they marketed and approached their PLG motion.
He's doing, segment-based marketing, or he's going after verticals, like you mentioned, consumer packaged goods. And he has a type of product where the cost of customization or templating is probably relatively low, like we went to the development team.
Mhm.
So I think it works for certain kinds of products. And I think it is something that you would also know, shade on this guy for seeing something correctly. But I think when you're in it, I think if you were in it, you would see the patterns. The other thing I'll say is it's about this observation this person at Canva made. It makes sense to me because he was running advertising, and one of the tenets of advertising that everyone I think knows is that the campaign creative and the landing page, when you click through, the experience should have continuity, right?
Right. Yeah.
So he's saying, hey, I'm going to target consumer packaged goods people with Canva so I can have much more compelling messaging about, and I've been in CPG, and managing your branding is super important, and giving people the tools that have, and I've used Canva, you have the ability to put in your brand assets, and then you're kicking off all kinds of, quick, social campaigns that are branded correctly and stuff. So, or assets at least. So my point is that it makes sense that he would connect those dots where he said, I'm targeting a vertical with specific messaging and value prop with certain kind of creative. And when they click on that, I'm going to push them to a landing page. That landing page is going to further talk about that stuff. And then if they go into the product, I want it to continue the story and keep them in the flow of that. And that's brilliant. And what I think is hard to do and very smart for him to pursue, I will say, because I've been here too, is trying to work with a technical team to make that happen. That is a marketer who's impacting product. There is a connection between, you were mentioning, when do you have one or the other? You try one, it's not working. Maybe you have to switch and adapt. There is, in our world, there's product-led growth, there's sales-led growth, and then there's what's called the hybrid. And one thing that we have considered, Flurry was harder to move a free user of analytics over to a paid user of a advertising and monetization solution. Some overlap didn't exist. In our world, where I'm at now, Run LLM, we actually think there is a much tighter overlap, I guess, or better overlap between the free user to the paid user, and when we take a product-led growth acquired customer and graduate them to a sales conversation. And so what I mean is there's going to be a set of customers that try us for free, and then they're going to start using us on a self-serve plan. And then at some point, like you mentioned, you had 20 users in and around Portland who are using, there's going to be some trigger for us as well saying, hey, that customer is getting big enough, or there's enough activity over here where we're going to graduate them from product led to sales. And they become, in fact, a lead, a source of leads, if you will, or qualified leads or opportunities,
Right.
whatever we define that. But they're going to become like worth having a salesperson reach out
Right.
and connect,
Yeah.
right? And
There's an
so we do
opportunity big enough
see,
there.
yeah, so we see not only a hybrid go to market where there's a self-serve platform that makes sense for us for many reasons. We can set pricing accordingly, at least as an initial set of hypotheses. We also know that the conversations are high stakes and intricate enough that we can't go to market without some sales led piece. And then we also see that they're going to be connected in the middle somewhere. So we truly have a hybrid motion burgeoning and brewing up here.
I don't know if I can take credit for this, but I'm going to. I've maybe read it someplace and I've completely, so but I'll abscond with the idea is brand led growth, which I would say is
Mm.
another sales motion. And our co-president, Elon Musk, is a big fan of this. And you and I have talked about this a lot in other contexts around brand, but it's when you've got a product that's so good, and this is also called word of mouth, right? This is an old term for it, that um, the buzz among the people. So this was something that Musk was big on why he didn't, have big marketing departments at Tesla, because he said, no, if I just make a great product. And, I certainly Apple was this way early on. There were a bunch of fanatics who loved the Mac so much. The product was so compelling and so, ahead of its time that there was a very fervent core group of users who would spread the word and, evangelize it. This is where the whole, Apple is a cult thing came from. And there are a lot of products like that, they just get the buzz. They don't do a lot of marketing, but the product is so great that word of mouth sells it. So I would also say that there's a brand led sales motion. You could call it word of mouth or use any of these other, old terms that does, have an effective way, of course, getting people into the funnel, so to speak, and getting them to buy the product.
And I'll just add on the brand led marketing. It's funny because I just realized we have product led growth and sales led growth, and then you said, well, there's product
Oh,
led,
brand led growth.
brand led, sorry, growth or market. And I agree with that. That's been traditionally what people do is you build up a reputation and association around a brand, and all of that together. Honestly, I think the meta goal is to drive down customer acquisition cost over
Yeah.
time.
Oh, absolutely.
And so people
Absolutely.
trust
And,
the
and
brand
I've
Nike.
said
I'll
this,
try the
your
new Nike
first,
product. Right.
yeah, your
Right.
first salesman is the brand. That is the
Mm,
first
yep.
thing a prospect sees is the brand, that logo mark, that jingle, that, tagline. That is
Yeah.
the first thing a prospect sees, right? Is the brand the brand is your very first salesman. So, it's critically important. And you're right. I mean, I don't want to be Captain Obvious here, but the whole idea, but about investing in a brand over years and years and years and decades and decades and decades is to bring down that top of funnel acquisition cost.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's interesting you mentioned that because I think in tech we're often calling that messaging, that first salesman concept. I've been working, this is harder to measure, and luckily I'm working closely with people in my company who can see the effort we're putting into it. But it does matter how you describe the product and the value proposition and all these other things and how it looks and feels and are you professional enough. And those are more creative aspects of marketing or more subjective sometimes. But once you put some measurement in place, you can start to A/B test some things. But that branding gets set um, pretty clearly in the beginning. What I was going to do is say, generally speaking, in tech, the way I think about high volume, low cost acquisition, especially because I've done a lot of startup work, I'm faced with constrained budgets all the time. I
Right.
like to generally look, I might have mentioned this before, and this is very high level, but I like for my brain, the owned, earned, and paid media framework.
Yep.
And generally speaking, I'll define those in a second for anyone who's not 100% familiar. But I like to play in the owned and organic space for little companies because you control it more. It's less expensive. You don't need a big budget, of course. And because of the phase of company you're in, you are building your brand and you are trying to lean into driving discovery in a way that is repeatable and scalable. So owned media is everything that you have direct. It's your website, it's your social channels, um, and your email list, how many people you can email who subscribe. That's your own piece. Your earned, of course, is like free and air quotes because it's like getting press coverage or getting speaking at a conference or something. You earn it, but you do have to spend a lot of time and sometimes a little bit of money to like stimulate those things. And you have to have usually good thought leadership potential, which also helps with your brand and your positioning. But I like earned and owned. Being really specific, I focus on the domain authority of the website. So the 0 to 100 score that Google is scoring websites on.
Mhm.
Google's the only search engine that really matters. Sorry, Bing and Yahoo. But so it is about uh, having authority and relevance as far as Google is concerned, so that when everyone is searching for things that might be related to your company, in my case, it might be AI technical support, let's say, those are keywords that I want to own. Those are topics I want to write about. If I get press coverage and they backlink to me, all press sites are like 90 plus domain authority. They give my website legitimacy around those topics. So what I'm doing is I'm driving down the cost of discovery by moving up the rankings and where I'm listed in search. So search engine result pages. I need to be top 3, top 5 certain terms that are high value and relevant to my site that push me there. I need to push my domain authority up so Google keeps funneling. How do you do that? You have a website that's well crafted around those topics and authoritative and checks a bunch of boxes on technical things, like you have a robots.txt file. That's the interface that is telling Google, please index me, please like look at my site and include it in your like a graph of the world. And so you have to have these technical SEO check boxes, loading time, speed, mobile web version. You have to have all that checked off. And then you have to really write a lot about these topics, and not just on the website, but like your blog, and you have to get covered, and you want backlinks. And if you do, like we're doing, for example, we have a very nice success story with a company that it's not released, so I won't name them, but they're I think a known up and coming company in the Valley who just raised, I think, a unicorn level value fundraise. They have a great story about how they thought about their product strategy and how they decided to use a solution like ours instead of building it themselves, because it allowed them to focus more on what they really need to do well, and that they found us to be a really good complement. And so what's that going to do? We just talked about this week, they're going to write a blog post. We work with them. There's two. We have a straight up case study that we're going to have, and they have and they're both really nice and authoritative and good for both companies. That's sort of, by the way, this is not like, we're not like fooling anybody here. They want to do it because it's good for them and it's a great story. But they are going to post theirs on their site, their success story that has a little mention of us, but they're going to have a link, and it's going to point back to us, and their domain authority is going to send us SEO juice, and it's going to be in around that topic. It's going to create discoverability for any traffic they have over there. And oh, by the way, they have and this is all organic. It just makes sense for them to do it. It's not like we ask them to do it. They have a newsletter that goes out to large group of people where they're going to also put that same article. So we're going to get traffic on that. That's going to be a signal that ultimately helps Google with organic. So these are the kinds of things you sort of have to do the hard work of adding value with customers and talking about your product and having them promote your product in an appropriate way that's not over the top. And all this over time starts building up. So you have to have great content strategy. You have to work with other companies. You want press to point back to you. You want other companies to point back to you. It's not about keyword stuffing. It's not about backlink farming games. It's about really adding value and working with the ecosystem so that over time your domain authority goes up, the content, the relevance. So it's all the organic, the inbound, it's all that stuff. But very specifically, I care about domain authority and high quality backlinks.
All right, Peter, we should wrap up. How about I read us out?
Please read us out, Steve.
We want to thank our audience for listening. Our editors, Lorenzo Fernandez Kopek and Marisa Gabriela Ramos, for making us sound and look great. Our marketing maven, Evan Robinson Lambert, for getting the word out. And of course, Eric Widener, president of AMA San Francisco, for sponsoring this podcast. Thanks very much. See you next week.